Alright, so first off, a quick update regarding the old channel and my lapse in uploading. I'm not dead. I know, it's been absolutely pathetic and I'm very well aware of that. I also realize that this is a bit different from my normal setting. Maybe you can't even really tell. But if you happen to watch my first two videos, those two took place in the same room. Okay, so you may also notice that I'm not going quite as hard with the editing just yet. I'm not doing an elaborate intro, not that I ever did. I would like to focus more on getting my ideas about movies out there rather than aspiring to get everything right from the very beginning. I just don't really care about video editing or necessarily memorizing my script. Or I don't actually have a script, I just have a list of pointers that help me to go in the right direction with what I'm actually saying. So if you have at least seen and remember my last video, then you might be wondering where my extraneous commentary on aliens is. And you would be right to wonder. That actually should have come out by now. Okay, so get this. It was meant to be published after a few days, maybe a week at most, after the Aliens review, but then it ended up being like 20 minutes of me just talking about the Alien franchise and a serious drag to edit, given how hyper-focused I can become on just literal milliseconds of the video. And then there were some other events. Who would have thought literally being stalked by a bunch of horny teenagers on drugs, mind you, and pedophilic adults, let's say, who constantly give you and your mate death threats and also attempt murder tends to put a damper on things. Oh, by the way, I'm sick. I have strep throat. Perfect time to be recording, I know. But yeah, that whole quandary is a long story in and of itself. Just so you know, I also wasn't exaggerating either. I'll not go into too much detail about that, at least not here and now. There was another factor, and that was just that I was depressed for a good many months there due to that aforementioned isolation, which was mostly caused by those events. And then I was also not on any medication, so that was an adjustment. Yeah, that is an even longer story to tell. So yeah, I realized that I have an avowedly chronic case of low energy due in part to my neurodivergence, which kind of spurs on the depression, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so if I ever get desperate enough, then I could start a storytime channel on which I only discuss these entirely gratuitous situations. But probably not, because I could just make a video on this channel. Anyway, the point is that I've been unmotivated and distracted, to say the least. Come to think about it, I think that, or I reckon that, what was that? Anyway, I think that for now, I'm just going to focus on working on shorter projects like this one, which is meant to be a review of Talk to Me. But not really, because I won't say absolutely everything that comes to mind. It's true. Anyway, let's forge on. C'est parti. Okay, so Talk to Me is a film made by YouTubers Rocka, which is to say Danny and Michael Philippou, if that is how that name is said.
Danny and Michael Philippou.
Danny and Michael Philippou.
I will not say much about them other than I tried watching one of their YouTube videos, but that didn't go down too well. Right.
This is a Lamborghini up for grabs in a Mr. Beast video. 50 people are gonna hold on to that car and the last one to let go gets
Nope. I tried. Anyway, this is essentially their debut / feature film, and at that I am pretty impressed. So the reception has rightfully been very positive, especially on YouTube, but on this movie reviewing / whatever I want to post channel, let's be honest. I like to be a bit of a derogatory Danny, you could say, or a melancholic Michael, or un vieilleux Philippe, si vous me comprenez. In other words, I would like to discuss what I, generally speaking, did not like about this movie, or rather this type of movie. I'll talk more about its type soon, but before then I will say one positive thing, and that is that Talk to Me is very well made, especially for a debut film, and especially considering its budget of approximately 441,270,000 Russian rubles, 4.5 million US dollars. But still, what? It's so little. That budget is scantily clad. Anyway, they did exceptionally well for themselves, but then again, the ad campaign for A24 movies are pretty good. A24 has that down. They also have their own brand of cultish devotees who would probably sell their non-vital organs, or even vital organs, just to get a chance to buy some of their ridiculous merchandise, like that $110 hand, $32 keychain, a $48 candle, or, God, a $45 beach towel. Anyway, A24's deceptively down-to-earth renown, masterfully tailored as it may be, is not the only problem here. You see, Talk to Me, the movie, too, has quite the flaw in my eyes. It is self-evident the box office success does not always vary directly with the quality of the movie at hand in general, even though this one deserves most of its success, I'd say. But you know me, Nancy Gale, I like to be negative, so let's get to that because I'm itching. And I'm also itching to spread some negativity. Oh my god. Okay, so there are many movies that are meant to be symbolic, wherein the antagonist or situation is supposed to represent something. They're usually meant to be metaphorical or emblematic of something in particular. It's a pretty simple notion. In the case of horror movies, it is usually a force, person, creature, etc. that is in opposition to or creating conflict for the protagonist to endure and potentially concur. Hopefully, I guess. So the problem is that with these movies, wherein being a metaphor for something is written with just that intent, the writers occasionally adhere too closely to those rules affixed to the initial thing of which the movie is trying to be symbolic. This can of course be done to the detriment of the movie's plot. So then how does this apply to Talk to Me? The problem is that this movie, which I'm assuming you, my sole viewer, has seen, ends up following those rules, doing unto itself a disservice, not really considering how best to selectively incorporate the original logic of the thing, or the logic surrounding the thing that is being symbolized in a narrative piece like this one. What am I even saying? Good question. I will reiterate these points throughout the video for maximal comprehension, so stay tuned. So just a few seconds ago, I mentioned that this is a type of movie. Well, in case you did not already know, in the horror movie subgenre, there is a type of movie that aims to tell you a story. Groundbreaking, I know. And then while it does this, it also simultaneously acts as a metaphor for something. You might have missed this in past movies because, well, most directors and writers are not inventive so much as innovative. We're used to this. Forgive me, for I'm not a film school student, because I don't want to rack up a bunch of... It is a broad definition, I know, but as far as I know, these are just called symbolic or metaphorical films, or if they're not yet called those things, then they are now in this video. Similar to symbolic, metaphorical films, I would also like to make a distinction between those and allegorical films. In my mind, at least, there's some overlap between the two films, like with Mother from 2017, for example. When deciding which kind of film I'm dealing with, I usually just ask if there is a coherent political or even moralistic statement being made about the film. And if there is, then I would say that is more of an allegory. There are morals there. Symbolism, metaphors, I feel like those can be a bit more apolitical or pointless. So, two films that I personally liked, or at least liked by the end of the movie, which have done this very thing very well, include but are not limited to movies like The Babadook, which is primarily meant to symbolize or embody the protagonist's grief and other emotions. To summarize, I would say that this movie actually straddles the line between an allegorical film and a symbolic one as well. And then there is The Cabin in the Woods, where the Cabin in the Woods whole experiment is meant to symbolize what has been done to satisfy the ever insatiable gods, which is in essence us, the viewers. If you've seen it, then you know what I mean. This movie does this just flawlessly and manages to be incredibly entertaining while pulling it off. This one is definitely an allegorical film, so it is different, but I like it even still. And then here are a few other metaphorical and allegorical films, not to be confused with movies that are meant to, I guess, reflect or critique our society through symbolism for political purposes, even though there is some overlap between those two categories. So, movies that are all about mirroring the tone of our political climate. I don't know if I call those allegorical films or not. Anyway, Hereditary, Ginger Snaps, Signs, Under the Skin, Rosemary's Baby, It Follows, Black Swan, Get Out, Teeth, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Where Evil Lurks. And then, of course, my favorite film that fits into this category is, even though its sequels seem to lose sight of that symbolism, Alien 1979, Alien 1979, not Aliens. Alright, so in Talk to Me, it is made very apparent that the point of the hand is to symbolize drug use and the strong urge to use it. So, drug addiction. But then it does something interesting. In a way that is obvious to the audience, they clearly illustrate how and why Mia, our protagonist, ends up going back to the substance, what is essentially a drug or a comfort to her in the film. It is because she is isolated from and vilified by those closest to her, and she's of course desperate for connection, which I think that the actress portrayed brilliantly. So it's all fine and dandy when the drug is done here and there at, say, a party, and as long as you're not too young, prone to addiction, or, have a void that needs filling, I guess. So then this is where it gets problematic. Because Mia needs to find herself at her nadir, her lowest point, a place at which she is so desperate to use the hand to connect with her mother, everyone needs to, in this case, blame her for allowing Jade's brother, Riley, to use the hand even though Jade's friends encouraged it too. More on that point later. So yeah, that only makes sense when the hand is considered a drug, not a cursed artifact. The hand is definitely not a drug, or at least not really. The negative side effects that it has on the host are different, and to everyone's knowledge, it does no real harm if done, within that time limit of like 2 minutes. Even if done repeatedly over time, there was really just no way for Mia to know what would happen if someone just a few years younger tried to use that hand. And there was no reason for Jade to oppose her brother's use of the hand unless you remember that the hand is supposed to be a drug. Do you see what I mean? The conflict just makes no sense. The symbol does not work. The character's behavior only makes sense if what is being passed around at the party are drugs, but again, the hand is nothing of the sort. Nevertheless, the writers, who are Danny Philippe and a Bill Hinsman, wrote the movie as though this hand and the use thereof could be, as far as the script is concerned, interchangeable with X real-life drug. This is why the plot becomes disjointed as the film progresses. And especially towards the end, you can see the writers write themselves into a bit of a grave as the movie progresses, little by little. The artifact with which these adults playing teens are really toying is not compatible with science in the same way that real-life drugs are. The consequences of using the hand, even irresponsibly, are indisputably different. Therefore, writing for the hand and real-life drugs cannot be approached in the same way. The way in which this movie plays out makes no sense as a result of this incompatibility. The mistake leads to the characters making decisions that don't really make sense by the end of the movie. Decisions that, when you disregard the drug metaphor, make no sense. Decisions that make no sense on their own. It is actually the case for most metaphorical films that do what they set out to do, but do that well, that the media has to be good on its own. Meaning independent of other art mediums, like movies or external notions, I don't know. In this case, we can easily distinguish between the plot device and the essence of the metaphor, so lucky us. I'll take that one step further and say that the plot and writing are, as a result, assailable because we can so easily disregard the metaphor. It is for this reason that I am shitting on the rules of Talk to Me's universe. I should not be recording right now while I am sick. So I promised myself that I would not instinctively waffle on about this movie, writing like 10,000 words that I'll eventually have to cut down by like 90%, like some other times. But there is more that I would like to say. But before I say those things, let's rate this movie. What we've all been waiting for. Okay. For a good chunk of this movie, I was thinking that it would be a 7, just because it is so well made, it's entertaining, and the performances were all great considering how incoherent the dialogue was. It was going in the right direction, I think, until Mia started getting flack, even after the other characters had time to process and receive explanations for what had happened. That was just inexcusable to me. But a character, Jade, being overprotective of her brother, however, was that was excusable because we don't know about her past. Anyway, I ultimately gave it a 6 out of 10. Let's talk. The characters' choices did not make sense, nor did a lot of the topics of conversation throughout this surprisingly short movie. It has a runtime of 95 minutes, but it actually felt much, much longer. Yeah, I found myself wishing while watching it that more could have been said, or that things could have been done differently. For example, how about not having Daniel rush out of the room, blaming Mia for sucking on his foot when she was obviously possessed while doing so, and then afterwards, she was visibly distressed. If this were realistic, then they might have a chat about it, and then she can defend herself, so Daniel can then defend her when it comes up again around Jade. You know, Jade could see the defense of Mia, and that could be cause for some conflict, even though she can understand why her boyfriend is defending her, or why Jade's boyfriend is defending Mia. This is just a little detail that could go a very long way in making the conflict believable. The conveniences in this movie, while few in number, were enervating, and even that is an understatement. They also ended up doing that annoying thing wherein a character accidentally stabs someone else, as if that's something that actually happens or could happen by accident in real life. That whole scene was executed very poorly. The choreography was too seamless. I mean, it was just a sorry excuse for getting her dad into the hospital for some tension. Of course, her dad never learns that she was attacked herself, as far as I can tell, and not just writhing on the floor waiting to attack him. They never share much from his perspective, even though it would have been nice. Lastly, and this is not the last thing, there were a bunch of other smaller reasons for which I docked the score, but I'll just end with this one. Talk to Me committed the all but too common sin of having the kids not involve any adults or even explain what was happening, since it is so easily verifiable. I mean, it's not like this hand only works when people under the age of 25 or so use it. Even in consideration of the drug metaphor, adults use drugs adults can understand, but there is no mention of this around adults. Simply having one of them, the adults, interact with the hand would have been nice. I mean, all you need is a candle or a scene in which they have an adult try it, only to realize that it does not work for them. There, problem solved. Again, these are establishing expositional scenes. We need to get more of those since we don't know all of the rules. I mean, why not? Regarding including adults, I mean, why did they not explain to, like, Jade's mother of all people, Sue is her name, what happened exactly? She did not need to hold a grudge against Mia or wait for the drug test results on Jade's brother to come back, but the screenplay allowed her to hold the grudge for the sake of isolating Mia further, because she's like a surrogate mother, I think. Like, I understand lying to the cops, but Sue's pretty hip for a woman in her 50s. At least I think she's in her 50s. She could have taken it with some proof. The film could have gone in a less annoying, more believable direction, but it would have to go somewhere completely different, since we would then be stripping it of its core logic, so I understand why they didn't do that, even though it would have improved the movie. Anyway, it's just a bit lazy for them not to consider these blatant sins. The film, at face value, is still it's still rather good in the end, but like most, it falls apart when you scrutinize the logic and details. In this case, it is because it sticks too closely to that pesky drug metaphor. Additionally, they relied on plot conveniences for getting where they wanted to in the end, rather than just taking an hour or so to brainstorm a series of events that make sense and get us where we need to go all the same. That brainstorming would fix so many horror films. I understand that horror movies famously do not win awards because there is an industry bias against them. That's really no excuse for them not trying. If this movie, or the people behind this movie, did that, if it were just as perfect, then we could have very well had another Hereditary on our hands, a movie that good, because the premise really is, it's amazing. Yeah. For all this, I have nothing else to say other than, oi mate, do better next time.